Every year, on December 31st, Aeric Caldwell feels it get closer. Not fast, not loud, slow. At 11:59 p.m., the room turns cold. Not the kind you feel on your skin, the kind that settles inside your chest. He's survived before. He's stepped back every time. But here's the thing about stepping back. Eventually, there's nowhere left to stand. And tonight, as the clock starts counting down, Aeric isn't asking if this is his last New Year. He's listening to hear if death is already standing behind him. Aeric Caldwell had lived in Las Vegas long enough to hate New Year's Eve. Not the noise, not the crowds, not even the fireworks that shook the windows like distant explosions. What he hated was the date, December 31. For most people in Vegas, it meant packed casinos, overpriced champagne, and strangers kissing at midnight. For Aeric, it meant something else entirely. It meant waiting. The fear never arrived all at once. It crept in slowly, like a leak you didn't notice until the floor was already soaked. By the first week of December, Aeric's sleep would fracture. He'd wake up at random hours with his heart racing, convinced someone had just whispered his name. By mid-December, food lost its taste. By Christmas, his hands trembled for no reason at all. And every year, without exception, his body reacted the same way, as if it remembered something his mind desperately tried to ignore. The first time happened when Aeric was 21. He remembered it clearly because it was supposed to be the best night of his life. New Year's Eve on the Strip, lights everywhere, music pounding through the pavement. He and a group of friends were drunk on cheap alcohol and expensive optimism. At 11:59 p.m., they were pressed shoulder to shoulder near a hotel balcony, screaming the countdown with strangers. 10, 9, 8. Someone shoved him from behind. Not hard, not intentionally, just enough. Aeric felt his feet leave the ground. For one impossible second, time slowed. He remembered looking down and seeing someone already there, standing directly beneath the balcony, still, watching him fall. Then hands grabbed his jacket. He slammed back against the railing instead of the concrete 3 stories below. People cheered, someone laughed, someone spilled a drink. Police called it an accident. Aeric never did. The second time came 3 years later, December 31 again. A late shift, desert highway, almost no traffic. At exactly 11:59 p.m., a pickup truck drifted into his lane at full speed. Aeric yanked the steering wheel on instinct, missing the impact by inches. The truck vanished into the darkness like nothing had happened. Aeric pulled over and vomited on the side of the road. That was when he felt it. Cold, close, something standing just behind his left shoulder. He didn't turn around. He didn't have to. A voice, calm, unhurried, spoke beside his ear. Not yet. When Aeric finally looked, the road was empty. After that, he stopped celebrating. He stopped going out on December 31st. He stopped believing in coincidence. Because every year, something tried to kill him. And every year, it failed. Doctors said anxiety. Therapists said unresolved trauma. Vegas had no shortage of professionals ready to explain his fear away. Aeric stopped explaining. Instead, he started preparing. He avoided crowds in December. He unplugged appliances. He checked gas lines obsessively. He stayed indoors on New Year's Eve with the lights on and the doors locked. It didn't matter. The danger never came from the same direction twice. By his early 30s, Aeric noticed something worse. Each year, the near-death moments felt closer, more personal, less accidental. And every year, at 11:59 p.m., she appeared. Sometimes she looked like a woman in a long coat, sometimes like a shape darker than the room around her. Once, she was nothing more than a presence that made the air feel heavy and wrong. But she always stood just close enough for Aeric to feel the cold seep into his bones. She never chased him, never touched him, never raised her voice. She only ever said one thing: "Not yet." Then she was gone, and Aeric lived. But survival came at a cost. After the highway incident, he lost his sense of smell. After another close call, a falling construction beam that missed his head by inches, his reflection in mirrors began to lag, copying his movements just a fraction of a second late. Each year, something small disappeared, something human. Aeric didn't tell anyone, until Mark Jensen. Mark had been his friend since college, practical, logical, the kind of guy who trusted statistics more than gut feelings. They met for drinks on December 12, a quiet bar far from the strip. Aeric told him everything: the date, the accidents, the figure at 11:59. Mark listened without interrupting. Then he smiled. "Man," Mark said, shaking his head, "Vegas messes with people. You've had bad luck, that's it." Aeric stared into his glass. "It's getting closer," he said quietly. Mark laughed. "So does age." Aeric didn't laugh back, because deep down he knew something Mark didn't. Death wasn't chasing him. It was approaching, step by step, year by year, and one day there would be no space left to step back into. On December 31, Aeric sat alone in his apartment overlooking the strip. Fireworks boomed in the distance. The digital clock on his wall glowed red. 11:42 p.m. Aeric didn't blink. He was waiting. Aeric Caldwell had learned something important about fear over the years. Fear doesn't scream. It doesn't rush. It waits. By 11:45 p.m., Las Vegas was fully alive. From his apartment window, Aeric could see fireworks testing the sky early, bursts of color snapping above the strip. Sirens wailed in the distance. Music thumped from nearby hotels like a second heartbeat layered over his own. Inside the apartment, everything was silent. Aeric sat on the edge of his couch, fully dressed, shoes on, keys in his pocket. He'd learned long ago not to get comfortable on December 31. Comfort made people careless. The digital clock glowed. 11:46 p.m. His chest felt tight. Not panic, something worse. Certainty. He stood and walked through the apartment one last time. Front door locked, balcony door sealed, gas shut off, stove unplugged. He checked everything twice, then a third time. Still, the feeling didn't fade. Because no matter how careful he was, it never mattered. The danger never followed rules. Aeric's phone buzzed. A text from Mark Jensen. "You alive over there?" Aeric stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he typed, "If something happens tonight, I need you to believe me." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Mark replied, "You're fine. Call me tomorrow." Aeric locked the phone and set it face down. Tomorrow was never guaranteed. At 11:50 p.m., the temperature dropped. Not dramatically, just enough for Aeric to notice. The air felt thinner, sharper, like the room had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. The ticking wall clock slowed, not stopped, slowed, each second stretching longer than the last. Aeric stood near the center of the living room. He didn't sit, he didn't pace, he waited. At 11:54 p.m., the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Aeric swallowed hard. "This is it," he whispered to the empty room. At 11:57 p.m., the corner of the living room darkened, not from lack of light, from excess shadow. The darkness thickened, folding inward on itself like a bruise spreading under skin. Aeric felt the cold before he saw her. She stepped forward, closer than she ever had before. This time she looked almost ordinary, a woman in her mid-30s, pale skin, dark coat, hair pulled back loosely, no glowing eyes, no distorted features. That was somehow worse, because she looked like she belonged. She stood less than 3 feet away, close enough for Aeric to feel the absence around her, like standing beside something that didn't generate heat. "You're early," Aeric said hoarsely. She tilted her head. "You're slower." The clock read 11:58 p.m. Eric's heart hammered against his ribs. "You come every year," he said. "You stand there. You say the same thing." She nodded. "And every year you step back." Aeric clenched his fists. "Why me?" She studied his face like she was memorizing it. "Because you always leave room." The words sank in slowly. "What does that mean?" Aeric demanded. She took one step closer. The air dropped another degree. "Most people don't see it coming," she said calmly. "You do." The clock ticked. 11:58:30. Aeric felt lightheaded. "So what happens at midnight?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. For the first time, she hesitated. That terrified him more than anything else. "Is this the year I don't get back up?" Aeric whispered. She looked past him, at the wall, the sealed doors, the city beyond the windows. Not everyone escapes forever. The clock read 11:59 p.m. Fireworks erupted outside, shaking the building. The sound felt distant, muted, like it was happening underwater. Eric's breathing turned shallow. "I warned someone," he said suddenly. She looked back at him. "I told my friend, Mark. I told him this would happen." She blinked slowly. Warnings don't stop movement. The darkness crept closer. Eric's vision blurred at the edges. His limbs felt heavy, wrong. "Then why do you keep letting me live?" he asked, voice breaking. She leaned in close, so close her breath brushed his ear. It smelled like nothing. "Because you keep stepping aside." The clock began its final minute. 11:59:10. Aeric felt something slipping. Not consciousness, something deeper, something essential. "I don't want to die," he said. She straightened. Neither did the others. 11:59:30. The walls seemed to lean inward. Eric's reflection in the dark TV screen stood a fraction of a second behind him. For the first time, it didn't catch up. "Is there anything I can do?" Aeric asked. Her eyes met his, and for the first time in all these years, she answered honestly, "No." 59:50. The fireworks outside reached a fever pitch. Color exploded against the sky. Inside the apartment, silence pressed in. Eric's heart pounded, then slowed. The clock hit 12 a.m. Everything went dark. Aeric gasped. Cold surged through him, not into him, but through him, like he was no longer a barrier, like he was an opening. And then, nothing. Morning light flooded the apartment. Police lights flashed against the walls. Aeric Caldwell lay on the living room floor, eyes open, no wounds, no signs of struggle. Time of death, 11:59 p.m. Mark Jensen stood in the hallway hours later, staring at the body. His face was pale. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a message from an unknown number. He wasn't wrong. Mark swallowed hard. For the first time, he believed. Mark Jensen did not sleep the night Aeric Caldwell died. He sat on the edge of his bed in his apartment, lights on, TV muted, staring at nothing. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to the digital clock on his nightstand. 2:17 a.m., 2:18 a.m., 2:19 a.m. The numbers moved forward. That was supposed to mean something. The police were calm.
too calm. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of foul play, natural causes. They kept saying it like repetition would make it true. Mark had nodded, signed forms, answered questions.
But one detail wouldn't leave his head. Time of death, 11:59 p.m. Not midnight, not after, before. Eric's voice replayed in his mind. It comes closer every year. Mark squeezed his eyes shut. "You should have listened," he muttered to the empty room. The funeral was small, closed casket, December sun hanging low over the desert. People talked about stress, about Vegas life, about how these things happen. Mark stood apart, hands in his coat pockets, staring at the dirt. Because he knew something they didn't. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't random. This had been approaching. December passed. January came. Life resumed. Mark went back to work, started sleeping again, started laughing again. He told himself the fear would fade, and for a while, it did. Then December came back. It started subtly. A restless night on December 5th, a chill in his apartment on December 12th, a feeling of being watched on December 18th. Mark laughed it off. Grief, he told himself. By December 24th, he wasn't laughing anymore. The air in his apartment felt wrong, heavy, still, the way Eric had described. Mark stood in his kitchen, staring at the gas stove, unplugged, just like Eric used to do. That thought made his stomach drop. On December 29th, Mark found Eric's old notebook. He didn't remember keeping it, but it was there, on his desk. Pages filled with dates, times. Notes written in shaky handwriting. Closer this year. Earlier. 11:59 again. Mark slammed the notebook shut. "No," he whispered. December 31st arrived quietly. No storm, no warning. Just the calm before something inevitable. Mark stayed home, locked the door, left every light on. He sat on his bed, back against the headboard, phone in his hand. The clock read 11:42 p.m. At 11:45 p.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "You didn't believe him." Mark's breath caught. His fingers hovered over the screen. "Who is this?" he typed. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. The screen went dark. At 11:50 p.m., the temperature dropped. Mark rubbed his arms. The heater was on. Didn't matter. The cold wasn't coming from outside. At 11:55 p.m., the ticking grew louder. Each second felt heavier, like the clock was counting something other than time. Mark stood up. "No," he said out loud. "This isn't happening." At 11:58 p.m., the corner of his bedroom darkened, the same way Eric had described, shadow folding in on itself. Mark's heart pounded. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have listened." At 11:59 p.m., someone stood behind him. Mark felt it before he saw it. Cold, close, breathing that wasn't his own. He turned slowly. Aeric Caldwell stood there, pale, still, eyes empty, but familiar, exactly as Mark remembered him, exactly as he'd seen him in the morgue. "Eric!" Mark choked. Eric tilted his head slightly. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I told you, something comes." Mark's legs buckled. "No, you're dead!" Eric stepped closer. The room felt smaller. "So am I," he said. Mark backed away until his legs hit the bed. Tears streamed down his face. "Please," he sobbed. "Please don't." Eric looked at him. Not with anger, not with hatred, with something worse. Acceptance. The clock ticked, 11:59:30. Fireworks exploded outside. The sound felt distant, wrong. Aeric leaned in close, so close Mark could feel the cold pouring off him. "It always comes closer," Aeric said softly. "Sometimes it just changes direction." Mark screamed. The next morning, police found Mark Jensen dead in his apartment. No wounds, no signs of struggle. Time of death, 11:59 p.m. In the bathroom, written across the mirror in dark streaks, were the words, "It comes for everyone. Some just see it first." And as December approaches again, somewhere, someone feels that quiet fear start to grow, wondering if this December 31st might be the one they don't escape.